Hi everybody, this is Kimberly from Starfish Design Embroidery Group. Tonight we are going to stitch out the Hold My Cards wallet. But before we do that, my son Grayson would like to have a little intro. Go ahead, Grayson.
Hello people, welcome back to another Starfish video. And I hope you like this video. And I'm sorry if there's barking in the video. And I got her these flowers right here. Bend them down.
Can you not see them?
No. I got her those flowers. They were, I'm pretty sure they were $5 or $6, and I did not buy them myself. But happy Mother's Day to all of you, and I was supposed to do this in the last video. I hope you guys have a good night. At the end of the video, that was for the end of the video, and get ready for kind of the bestseller and kind of not.
Okay.
And good luck, Mom.
All right.
And by the way, they're probably going to give you some thumbs down. Maybe.
Somebody will, yes. All right, give me kisses.
I guarantee.
Good night, I love you. Okay, everybody.
Oh, hold on. One last thing.
One last thing. Oh no, that's too loud.
No, I'm not going to turn it off.
Okay, he wants to show you one last thing, people.
And my mom bought this with her own money. It cost $150.
$110 because they matched Amazon's price for us.
Well, technically it was $150.
Yes, it was $150 at Micro Center, but they met the
and
Amazon
so
price.
this is a speaker. So this is to pause it. This is to turn it up, and this is to turn it on. This is to like rewind. No, this is to rewind it. And this is to turn the volume down.
Okay, good night.
So,
we're not doing a video on the speaker.
Good
Maybe you
night.
can do a YouTube demonstration of the video. Okay.
Okay.
All right, everybody, back to the show. So I've gone ahead and stitched out the placement lines.
Before the video even started.
Yes, I do that so you don't have to be bored by it. My placement lines do match up with my hoop settings, but it's a good idea to go ahead and draw those, extend them out with a pen, just in case yours doesn't. And we need 2 pieces of fabric that is, whatever it is, 6 inches by 20 inches. So basically a 6-inch piece of width of fabric would be fine. I did starch these because I did not use SF101. So I'm going to show you how to use the SF101 as we go along, just in the card slots itself. So if you don't want to do it. So this is what we're making. Mine, see how nice and stiff these pockets are, and that's because I used SF101 on the entire surface. And this does get a little bit wrinkly here. I mean, it's cotton, it's going to do that. There's nothing to hold it against the backing. I did put the flexible or fold over elastic too high in this, and the pattern is fixed, so we'll show that. I'm using a vinyl on the outside. So instead of using the SF101 on the whole thing, I'm going to show you how to do it without. You can totally skip it if you want, but it does really help add a lot of body to the material. So I have no idea what this material is supposed to be, flower or something. I think it's a butterfly. I don't know, but so what we're going to do is we're going to put the right sides together and match up the raw edges and make sure that these are as straight as you can get them. And then we're going to go ahead and line this up with this original placement line and try and keep it centered over there as well as you can. And then we're going to tape it down. And I'm finding that when I use the Pink Perfection tape or Embroidery Perfection tape that I like a lot on the cotton, it's just a little bit too heavy and it tends to try and pull out the stitches. So I'm just using Scotch tape. And I already, I don't think I cut this. I didn't trim up the bottom, so it's looking like it's not even. So let me make sure that's even. Okay. So we're going to do that, and we're going to return it to the hoop. And you need to make sure you manage this extra fabric so it doesn't get hung up anywhere on your machine. So because my hoop is all the way in the back, that's an issue for me because I have to keep pulling it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and run the next step. And this is going to be your opening, your birthing hole. So it's going to go over and back stitch, and then it's going to go ahead and step over to the other one. And I'm sorry I cannot get my tripod to go up any higher. Don't buy cheap tripods. This should be higher, and it's not extending for some reason. And just to make it, I'm going to keep moving my frame in and out because it's hard to reach it when it's all the way in the back, and I worry the weight of trying to push down on it is too much. So go ahead and cut your jump stitch. Yes, there's jump stitches in this. No, I'm not a bad digitizer. I am a new digitizer, but I don't think I'm a bad digitizer. But the only way to alleviate those jump stitches is to make every single step a different color. On a multi-needle machine, those jump stitches would trim, but on this machine, they're not going to unless it's a different color. Okay, so we're going to fold down. We're flipping and stitching. So we stitched, and then we're going to flip. We're going to flip that down, fold it down, and use your pressing device to press that seam. That could be your finger, or I'm using this little boning tool. Let me get these things out of here. And just press that seam. If you have an ironing board surface handy and one of those small irons, you could use that. So I'm going to go ahead and, oops, I lost my tape. Tape the sides down. I do have some pins here, and when you get to a point where you can put pins, that's helpful because you don't want anything, you don't want this to be loose, else it won't be neat. And our goal is to be neat and have nicely pressed pockets so that it looks nice. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and run the next step, which is going to be the base of the pocket, the first pocket. And I'm sorry, I am using pink thread, so I know it's not showing up in the video as well. All right, so we have stitched, and now we're going to flip. So there's our little line. We're going to flip up and fold against that line. Move the tape. For some reason, this hoop, I even tried to tighten it on that side. It keeps, the fabric wants to kind of go down in there. So set this tape aside. One of the things I want to point out is when you're flipping up this, make sure that you're staying even on this side with your fabric. Because if you don't, if it goes off like this, then you're going to have messy pockets. So you want it to stay up even, and you want to press this. And I'm at a point now where I can just use my finger. Okay? And now, because I'm going the other direction, I am going to use a pin all the way up here out of the stitch path. And that's going to hold that fabric taut so that I get a nice clean stitch. It's going to stitch the next stitches to form the top of the pocket. And again, I'm going to move this out of the way so I can reach my hoop. You won't have this issue on most machines. All right. And it is Mother's Day 2019 when you're watching this video or when I'm recording it. So I hope you all had a good Mother's Day if you're a mother to a human or canine or feline or any of the above. I'm a retired foster mom, so I still consider myself mom to 4 kids. I did the math, and I actually, I forgot, I had 16 kids over the 10 years, counting the kids I did respite for. But my longtime placements that are forever in my heart are my 4 kids, my first 2 girls, and then my son who went back to the girls went back to their birth mother, and my son who went back to his birth mother. And then, of course, y'all who've watched my videos know Grayson, my forever son. Okay, so I'm taking my SF-101 and I'm going to lay it down here now. I just cut 2-inch strips, and I want to lay the fusible side up. That's the rough side, the glue side, because at the end, we're going to press this and set that, and we want the strength of the interfacing to be on the outside of the pocket. And then I'm carefully going to fold this down. So I've stitched it, I'm flipping it down. And again, I'm making sure everything stays even. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and use my fingernail. And I feel like the SF-101 is not, it is, okay. So it is good. And you want to see, I did pull a little too hard here. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can zoom in with my fingernail. The stitches, if you can see the stitches, that means you're pulling your fold down. You're flipping it too hard. Try not to do that like I did, because what will happen is your pockets won't be even. And it's shockingly difficult to get these pockets even in stitching, digitizing. But I figured this would be much easier than trying to, if you've sewn a pattern before and you've sewn credit cards, any kind of credit card pattern, usually the sewist gives you this long instructions to measure, get a long piece of fabric, measure here, measure there, fold, fold, flip, fold. And I didn't want to do that to you guys. So I said, what is an easier way to do this? I'm just going to digitize it. And I did this in my Easy Flip, what is it called? Wallet, my iPhone wallet. And I actually have a whole series, if I can ever get them tested, to release of that. I know some other people have started to copy this methodology, but I do think I was one of the first ones to do it, with the exception of maybe one long-time digitizer. But it's just, I do everything the way I would do it when I'm sewing. So there's that little stitch, and this is just to form the base of the next pocket. So we're going to go ahead and flip the fabric up. And again, this is a time where we can actually use the pins to hold it taut in the top. And again, we want to make sure that we're staying neat here and it's lined up. And then we're going to use our finger or our pressing device and stitch that down. And I'm going to have to get a pad on this table because I just realized tonight that this back of this hoop thing is putting marks in my table. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to get like a tile or something to put on here. And it's not an heirloom desk. I don't know why I worry about it. I got it off of Craigslist for my son and I ended up using it. This is why I don't like this thing. It's hard to do. Okay. But this is a good machine to test on because it's not as powerful as some of the other machines. So I know if it tests out on here, it's going to test good for my clients. Likewise, I usually test my snap tabs on Joann's white marine vinyl because that stuff is so stretchy. I figure if I can get something to look good on it, it's going to look good on almost any vinyl. Okay, so now I've stitched and we're going to flip. We're just going to keep doing this many, many times. And cut these jump strings in the end because you don't want those to hang up on you. So again, we're going to put our little piece of SF-101. And it's easy to do because you can just line it up at the top of those stitches. Oops, I missed. I try to trim these as I go along. As long as you cut it even, it should be even. Okay, I'm not going to pull too taut this time because I don't want to get it off my pockets to be even. So I'm laying this down and make sure that everything still looks even and evenly distributed and my pockets look good. So I'm going to go ahead and try and get a pin all the way down here because tape is not working too well right now on the sides. So I think I can get a pin in here, way down here out of the way. You see that? So be mindful, always be mindful of where your presser foot's at if you're using any pins or hardware. And you don't want your presser foot to go into hitting anything. When you're doing an in the hoop project, it's not the time to step away from it. If you have to step away and go pee or something, then you need to stop your machine. Now this one doesn't have a zipper on it, and that's actually why I am doing this, because I had a customer request to make my card holder wallet that comes with a zipper without a zipper. And that's how this all started. But I misunderstood her and thought she wanted a credit card. She just wanted the business card holder. So you'll see the video for that as well. So again, we've stitched. Now we're going to flip. And this is going to be the end of our bottom last pocket. And you'll see that because we're almost out of our placement line. Placement line's almost gone. And again, I'm going to pull this all the way up here and stitch or pin this in place. And then we're going to put this on here and do our last pocket on the bottom. So just make sure you use whatever thread matches your particular material that you're working with. And I'm sorry I just bumped you guys. And here's the card holder. It still needs pressed. So this is the business card holder version. Hold my business cards wallet. All right. So that's our last pocket on the bottom. Trim our jump stitch. And then we're going to add our SF101. And I left my pieces wide. You can trim it even smaller if you don't want it in the seam allowance. But I'm not too worried about that. So I left mine wide. All right, again, so I put that down there right in the top of my stitches. And we're going to fold this down. And I did cut the pieces generously because your folding technique, they may not be as tight as mine. And I don't want you to run out of material. Again, I'm going to use my finger. Now this time, I'm not going to be able to put the pin down there in the bottom because it's actually going to stitch down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the pin and pull it in right here because I can't really get the tape in there. And this is going to be out of my stitch area. So now it's going to stitch right here to hold this in place. One thing to note when you're coming around these, keep an eye on when your presser foot is going to come around. It's not on this step, but when we get to the next steps, you don't want it to jump any of these and bump them open. So make sure this is smooth and out of our way. Okay. And this is just going to be a little bit of a stay stitch that most of it will probably get cut off in the seam allowance. But it just helps keep that fabric from shifting while you're doing the top. Okay, now I made this a separate step because I want you to have time to smooth out your fabric in case it needs to be smoothed out and not automatically go to that step. So if you're wondering why, this could have been one step, but that's why. So go ahead and just run the next step, and this is going to form the bottom of the first pocket for the top. Okay, so we've stitched and we're going to flip. And I can remove this pin down here now because we did this stay stitching, so this is not going to move anymore. And you can see the benefit of having an iron at your work surface. Then you can iron these and get them nice and flat as you go along, and it'll be much crisper. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, and again, when we fold down, we want to make sure it's not over here like this. We want it to be straight up and down. And we're going to finger crease, use our iron or our favorite boning tool. And we can go ahead and use the pin down here to hold it out of place. Or use your tape. And then we're going to stitch our top of our pocket. I did make these stitches so that they're not within the actual wallet. They're very close to the seam allowance. Okay, so we've stitched, and now we're going to flip. Going to undo the pin, cut our jump stitch. Yeah, this is pretty boring, but it's really quite easy. And then we're going to flip this up. Oh, don't forget your SF101 or your other stabilizer. Interfacing, I should say. Again, make sure that that is lined up right with your top of your stitches, in this case the bottom of your stitches. And then fold up. And I'm not going to be able to iron mine on video because my iron is upstairs. So, but at the end, before you flip yours inside out, you're going to press it. Mine is actually going to get caught in my seam allowance, but yours may not. Okay, I can use a pen up here because we're going to be far away from the stitch area. And the step. So anytime you can do that, make sure your flower head is flat, make sure everything is flat, and you press that nice and smooth. And now we're going to stitch the bottom of the next card slot. Make sure that's out of the way. Press our foot down. And this is really monotonous, I know it. But if I don't show you every single step, somebody will get confused, and we don't want confusion. And I could not have picked a more busy material, could I? There we go. So now that's the bottom of this next pocket. Okay, we're going to fold down. Again, we're making sure that we're staying even along here. I'm trying to check and make sure I'm staying in the video for you guys. That's the biggest problem I have, is making sure I get in the video the whole time. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and stitch the top of the second pocket.
Are you supposed to see the whole thing while it's doing that? Because it's not.
No, honey, I can't. For some reason, the tripod isn't raising all the way up.
Oh.
I'm going to have to buy a new one.
Is it okay if I don't go to sleep early, because I'm kind of
Okay, so there's the top.
like, if I don't fall asleep, can I watch stuff? It helps me.
No. Okay, so we're going to trim our jump stitches. Try and get the kid to go to bed again. All right, pull this out. Again, we're going to put our SF101 rough side facing up, lined up with the bottom, in this case, of the stitches. And then we're going to flip up. So we stitched, now we're going to flip. We're not going to pull too hard. We don't want to see our stitches popping out on the sides. And we're going to press with our fingernail or our other device. And we're going to pin. We can still use a pin on this side. And we're going to replace it, and we're going to stitch the line for the last pocket. As soon as I get this back on here.
Can I tell them something?
No.
It's something. I'm going to tell them to... Can I get something to eat?
Alrighty, so that's the bottom of our last pocket. So again, we've stitched, and now we're going to flip. And again, we're making sure that our sides are nice and even. I'm going to put the pin down here out of the way. There we go. And now we're going to stitch the top of the last pocket. You know we're getting to the end because we're almost out of stabilizer.
And plus we're in 26 minutes then. Can I tell you something real quick?
Alrighty. I feel like saying alright, alright, alright. Who all knows what that is from? Or who it's from. Imagine getting famous and being known for that. Okay, so we're going to get our SF101 strip. Rough side up. Line that up with the bottom of those placement stitches. And open up our final thing. And I definitely made these very generous cuts. I guess you can modify that. I think I'll mark the pattern and take a couple inches off because it is a waste of fabric, but I figured that it would be easier for you guys because otherwise the bottom is a different size, and if you mess up, it's harder to see. Okay, I'm not going to be able to probably get a pin in there close to the end of the hoop as we saw on the bottom, because it's going to stitch down there. So I'm going to put a pin from this direction and put it in there to keep that fabric from getting loose while it stitches the stay stitch. So I'm going to leave this on here. It's going to stitch the stay stitch, and I'm going to go straight into stitching the stitches for the fold over elastic. And I'm not changing the thread. I know it's harder to see, but I'll show it to you because I don't want... See, I'm going to go right for that pin. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out now. It did its job. And actually, I think I'm going to use my hemostat to help guide this, make sure this fabric doesn't bunch as it comes around the bend. Because that can sometimes happen. There's a lot of bulk here, and the presser foot can actually kind of come bouncing up from all that bulk. Okay, now I'm going to leave this in here. I'm going to go straight into stitching the placements for the fold over elastic. Yeah, I put my fold over elastic in one position. If you want yours higher or lower, go ahead. And this is where you need to be careful. Make sure the presser foot doesn't hit these folds. And I know you can't see it, but I'll show you what I mean. Sometimes when it's coming around and it hits these folds, it could push them up. So always keep an eye on your presser foot. Okay, so let me trim these threads. So much easier to do it as we go along. Okay, so now I've stitched my fold over elastic placements right there. And I'm going to get a piece of fold over elastic. And I just had some pink here. What did I do with it? And I'm going to press that down. I just had some. This is too.
I can go get.
Oh, this is pretty. This is okay.
Okay, because I was about to say I can go get you some upstairs.
Oh, thank you, Grayson. All right, so we need just about a 6-inch piece. And if you're using fold over elastic that has a pattern on it, make sure the fold over elastic pattern is facing down. Okay. So we are going to use tape here, and I'm going to use a couple pieces of tape because it wants to come loose. So I'm going to line this up and put it in the middle. Oh, I missed a jump stitch. Sorry, guys. Why did you tell me that? I'm going to put it so it's in the middle because your elastic may be wider than mine. So make sure you line it up. And I'm going to extend it about 1/2 inch past that line. I'm going to put a piece on this side first, and then I'll put another piece. Oh, and this is satin gift wrapping tape. Not recommend it. It's not as easy as the regular tape, but it's what I have sitting here handy. So again, I'm going to pull this over, and you want it to be slightly taut. You want to stretch it. And again, you want to make sure it's centered. And you can actually tell as well by the placement on the pocket, it should be even on both sides. You want it slightly taut. And that's why you need 2 pieces of tape, because you're stretching it and it's not going to want to stay. Okay? See that? And now this is going to be a tack down stitch, and then it'll get a further tack down stitch when you do the final seam, adding the backing to it. And again, see, oops, it just did that. So let me hold the video up so you can see what I mean. See how the presser foot bumped it? So that's what I'm talking about. You always have to be on the lookout for that. Don't walk away from your machine because you could have a catastrophe on your hands. So I'm going to cut my thread, pull this out, and fix that. And that's what happens sometimes if you've done my, is it the Sassy Hipster? I talk about having these hills, building a hill of tape to allow the presser foot to go over top of something. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and use my hemostats and try and help guide that so it doesn't hang up again. Now on something that would be used a lot more often, a regular wallet, you might want to have a little bit more reinforcement of that stitching than what we're going to have. Okay, so now we're ready to do the backing. We're up to the last step. So I'm going to remove this tape. And if you have any pins still in your machine or anywhere in the project, remove those. I don't, because I removed them all as we went along. Carefully remove the tape. And see what I mean? The satin, this tape, the gift wrap one, sticks a little bit more than the other clear Scotch tape does. So I don't like it as much, but it's just what I had handy. Trim the jump stitches. Okay, make sure you have it in the right direction, especially if you're using a multi-frame. So now I've covered up all my hoop markings. So I'm going to go ahead and trim off the fabric. So I can see my hoop markings. So really, we're talking, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 5 inches off the top. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and get my piece of vinyl. And what I'm going to do is on my vinyl, I'm going to fold it in half at all junctions. And I'm going to put a tiny little snip right inside there. Just like 1/8 of an inch on each midway mark. So that I have something to line up my markings with to make sure I center this, because if you don't center it, then you might run out of backing on one end. So again, you can use a pen. If you're using cotton, you can use a washable pen or a chalk or whatever. Okay, so now that I have my midway markings, so find that little halfway, that little midway, and make sure it's lined up where your hoop middle is, or if you're using the lines, and then likewise, make sure this is lined up at the top and the bottom. And that's really important if you're using a printed vinyl for the exterior and you want your direction to be right. Okay, now I'm going to try and tape this down because I cannot pin through the vinyl. It'll leave a hole. And I'm actually going to go ahead and use my hemostats to guide this and make sure that I don't come loose anywhere. So, never ever get your finger up in there. It's a surefire way to get a needle in your finger. I'd rather break my needle and this hemostat than have a $5,000 hospital bill because a needle went through my finger and I had to have emergency surgery. Always keep your hands away from this. If you need to get up here and fix something, you turn this off and then you fix it. Hands should never be here. Trust me, I did it once on my multi-needle. I was very new to the multi-needle, I will say that. And I wasn't, because you have all those needles going, I was looking in the wrong place and I thought I could hurry up and reach under and grab some material that was going wonky, and the needle went right through my finger. And I am so lucky. I'll show you where it went. I got so lucky. I've seen the pictures, and if you're watching this video, don't give me a thumbs down for saying this, but please don't post your pictures in the Facebook groups. If you want to post your picture, put it in the comments, because we don't need to see that. And I don't have a bad tummy. I can handle gore. But it's just, you kind of don't always want to see that. I might be eating dinner and trying to read something, and all of a sudden I see blood and bone. And I want to show you, this struggles a little bit with the thickness here. This is okay. But I just want to show you why it's so important that I test on this 350E. Down here, can you see that? How it got a little bit wonky right there? That's not the digitizing, that is the presser foot. There's a lot of bulk under here, and it's trying to go under that, over that. So I was mentioning when I got the needle through my finger, it was this finger, and can you see it? Right here, the needle went right there, right to the side. It went right through that skin, that flesh. What is that, like a millimeter? It missed my finger. Now, okay, there we go. So we're going to remove the tape. It did its job, kept the vinyl pretty much seated. And I'm running out of, somebody needs to invent something that we can put all our tape on. I guess a trash bag or something, that small one that you can use. Okay, let's remove our hoop now. And I was going to say again, but you guys may not have watched my other video. We're going to carefully tear away the tearaway, because let's go in here and move all these threads first, all the bob and jump strings. The original placement line, and this is why if you have a multi-needle, I do recommend using a different color for the original die line. It's kind of hard to see if those stitches are your stitches for your project when you're using the same kind of thread. So when you're tearing away the stabilizer, be mindful that you're not pulling out your stitches, because that can happen. I did that on a project the other day, and I realized after the fact why I did it. So I'm going to tear away my stabilizer, and you guys don't need to see me do this, but here, I'll put it on screen. And you'll see some of these where our little stitches are, that stabilizer is kind of embedded in there, so just be careful. A little bit of stabilizer stuck inside is not going to hurt anything in the long run versus tearing out your stitches. Okay, so, and then inside here, get inside those stay stitches and pull that stabilizer out. And I'm trying to keep this in the camera, even though it's boring, because I had a hearing impaired group member mention that when I went off camera in the live video, she didn't, because she can't hear and there's no closed captioning on the live, she didn't know what I was doing. So at least if you can't hear what I'm saying, you can see what I'm doing. So again, I'm just to see right there, that's the original die line. So I'm going to get in here and trim that, because if I just keep tugging at it, I potentially could be pulling out my stitches, my final stitches, and I don't want to do that. Okay. And you can actually trim this up and then come back and do this if you want, but I'm just going to do this real quick. It's much harder to do it in the video to make sure, because I'm reaching over here to make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. And it's harder to see if I'm in that original placement line. So that's why I want to try and be careful not to tear that out. Gently pull it out. And if you have money is not a big deal for you, I'm sure it is for most of us. We don't want to spend our money on stabilizer, but you could use something like Filene, where it's that water-soluble stabilizer that's more like fabric, and then you don't have to be as mindful about pulling all this out. Also, the 360 Pellon that I use for most of my big in the hoop projects, that would be actually good too, because it tears much easier. It's good and bad. It tears much easier, but I actually have a harder time getting it out of the small seams because it does tear easily. And you can see here, because it's pulling away with it, that is an actual stitch on the original die line. So I can be careful and tear that off. Just run your finger along and just keep working it out. Now, remember, I did not go upstairs and iron mine. So I have that SF101 in there. It did get caught in my side seams at least, but I'm going to try and be careful and mindful of that when I press this. Or I'm sorry, when I turn this inside out. And I'm totally going to leave that stabilizer there. I'm not worrying about that. All right, here we go. Again, just be careful and be mindful that you're not pulling out your actual stitches and that you're just pulling your original die line stitches. Better to leave a little bit of stabilizer in there than to pull out your stitches. Now, when we go to trim this, I'm going to trim this area first so I can show you. We're going to find where we put in our fold over elastic right there. We do not want to trim that fold over elastic small to the same seam allowance. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. I'm going to fold this out like this. You can see it, right? And then I'm going to trim down my seam allowance. There. Get that out of the way. And then likewise, I'm going to do the same thing for the vinyl, because I don't want to cut that fold over elastic short. If you do, it's going to, over time, it's going to migrate away from, it's going to end up get pulled out. See, if you leave it long, it won't get pulled out. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to hold it out and then trim just that part real quick. And then I'll go, once it's out of our way, then we can go around and trim the rest. So I'm doing about 1/4 of an inch. And likewise, I'm going to do the same thing with the vinyl. I'm going to pull that out of the way. and then trim. Okay, now that our fold over elastic is out, we can go around on this side where we can see easier and trim 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to leave my corners a little bit wider so I can notch them, because I just think you get a much better turning when you do that. So you can't see, you can't tell, but I'm struggling getting through those folds. Okay, so I'm getting close to that fold over elastic, so be careful because I don't want to cut into it. So I didn't get the seam allowance good enough there, so I'm going to fold it over so I don't get caught in that fold over elastic. There we go. All right. And I'm just going to go straight across here, and then I'll come back and do the corners. This is about the only good thing I find with these Jim Holtz scissors, is it is good for clearing the bulk in the hoop bags. I've otherwise not been impressed with either this big size or the small size. I bought both of them because I've read so many great things about them, but it does go through this bulk a little bit better than my other scissors do. Okay, and that's a little bit too much, but I'm going to trim it a little better. So over here, you see, I'm going to pull this out. There's still a little bit too much there too. All right. So that's pretty good all the way around. It's about 1/4 of an inch. And what I'm going to do on the corners, I'm going to round it off. And it also helps when you got a corner if you go in here and taper this out a little bit. You see what I'm doing? So that helps too. But I'm just going to go ahead and go around the corner and round it off because we used rounded corners. And then I'm going to notch the corners. I just think it gives a much better turning. These are my second favorite scissors, the Westcott Titaniums, and you can usually find them on lots of groups, pretty reasonably priced. So what I like to do, let me sure you can see what I'm doing. Yes, right there. I like to go in here and put notches. I do not get into the seam allowance, but you want to get close to it. Make sure you guys can see what I'm doing. I think you can see. Yeah, there we go. Do not cut into seam allowance. If you do, you need a sewing machine to fix it. But see, because it's removing all of that material, it's going to allow the seam to open up and spread out when you turn it. And hopefully we're on camera right now, but I'm sorry I can't see. I need to figure out a better solution for that so I can see what you guys are seeing. Make sure you're still able to see what I'm seeing. Yeah, I think we're in the view, right? So again, and I have accidentally cut into the seam allowance before doing this. So, but I have mini sewing machines. I have a sewing machine, so I just go ahead and resew it and take a little bit tinier seam allowance to trim it. If it's too much, you can actually use some fabric glue so you can save your project if you do actually cut into it too much. Use some fabric glue and fix it. I'm going to trim this. This is a little bit too wide there. Pull this out. And you can kind of see how much bulk there is there that it's going to get into your seam allowance. Okay, did I trim all of them? Okay. So we've left our fold over elastic long. Now we're ready to turn. So we're going to go ahead and find our turning hole. You can see where we left it open. And we're going to reach inside. And this is when those hemostats are good. I'm going to unlock them. And I'm going to reach inside and grab the corner and yank it out. Right. I'm reaching underneath because the pockets are in there. So I can get all the way to this corner. And then you yank it, you pull it, and it helps you pull it out without having to reach your hand all the way in there. Just hold on tight and don't let it go. And it's going to start to pull that corner out. Once I get it to this point, then I actually use my hand and just start working it. Now, I wasn't able to grab the vinyl that time. It's actually better if you can get a hold of the vinyl and pull it out. But it's actually a generous birthing hole because we can easily conceal it behind the pocket. So we're going to do this and we're going to keep pulling until we get all the way out. Am I still in the video? I hope so. I learned my lesson from not replaying the video before I uploaded it to YouTube. And one of the videos I did, I was off camera a whole bunch of times and I didn't notice it. So now I actually kind of sit through and listen to these and watch them and make sure they look okay. I'm not to the point of editing them yet. That's a lot of work and a lot of time that I frankly don't have. So I'd rather somebody give me a thumbs up because my kid's in the background or something. I mean a thumbs down, than to waste hours editing these videos. This is not my primary career and my time is valuable. I'd rather be digitizing and stitching and playing with my son than spending hours doing a video. I'm not knocking the people who do that because that's their livelihood. So they want the most professional videos. I do too. Hopefully I'll get better, but no, I will never be sitting around for hours editing YouTube videos. It's just not going to happen. Okay, you see how I got it out. And one thing you want to be mindful of is sometimes your pockets will come to the outside. It's fine, just flip them over. Get your fingers in there as soon as you can and start pushing out the corners. And remember, we're through our birthing hole, so we have plenty of opportunity to get in there. And I like to do a rough turn and get with my finger as much as I can out. And then you can go back in with your chopstick or these hemostats that I got from Amazon are actually nice. They're rounded. Oh, and I forgot to mention, so sorry about that. Before you do this, if you use that SF101, I mean, I mentioned it when we were stitching, you need to press this before you turn it. That way your SF101 stays neat in there. But I'm not going to go off camera and go upstairs and press this for you. I don't want to waste time doing that. And I did leave my strips wide enough that they are actually in the seam allowance. So I'm hoping that will keep them a little bit straight. Okay, so I've done about the best that I can with my fingers. So now I'm going to lock these hemostats so that they don't come open. And I'm going to reach inside with the blunt part of the hemostat and work out those corners a little bit more. And even though that's blunt, you still want to be careful because you could still tear right through that vinyl. And you do not want to do that. Else your however long we've been doing this is going to be wasted. How long have we been doing this? 54 minutes? No way. Okay, and then sometimes you can rub along your seam allowance with that and open it up inside to get a better seam in the ending. Alright, and I'm happy with that actually. There we go. So then what you're going to do is you're going to iron all this and press it neat. And then you have your birthing hole down here. And see, this came up when we were turning it. Right here. You're going to iron that so it's flat again. And then this, you're going to put a piece of tape or you're going to blind stitch it with a finger or a sewing needle. and stitch that closed. I'm going to use double stick tape. And you're going to press this really nice and neat. Get in here and smooth out these pockets. And again, this area here is going to be a little bit more loose because we can't attach it to the inside without stitching through the pockets. But it's got to be like that for the design. Okay, and then you can actually work through here and pull these pockets down at your ironing surface and press that really well. Now, be very careful when you are using vinyl because you don't want to press your vinyl. So let me get some cards. I'm going to go off camera so that you guys aren't trying to capture my credit card numbers. And we're going to put our cards in here. All right. There we go. So there's your cards fit in there. And you're going to go ahead and flip this out. Oh, I did it backwards. I put my vinyl the wrong way. It should have been the other direction. I wasn't paying attention. But that's okay. I don't know that there is a right or wrong side of that fold over elastic. But there you go. Yours is going to be much neater because you're going to have gone to your ironing surface and ironed yours nice and neat. And you have a nice little Hold My Cards wallet from Starfish Designs Embroidery. And if you want to do another hooping, you could carefully line up and do a stitching on this. You have, let's see, here's my broken ruler. My son broke my ruler the other day. It's okay. You have about 3 inches by 3.5 inches to work with if you want to embroider there. You just need to be very careful. What I would do is use some tape so that you can line it up when you lay it down flat. But it's totally possible to do that. I know somebody's going to do that, and it'll be pretty. This is the metallic. Oh, I just forgot the name of it. Dragon fruit. That's what it is. Dragon fruit. I just love this metallic vinyl. I cannot tell you. Do you see? There's no wrinkles. You saw how easy it was. I'm going to go online more and order all the colors because Amy at My Punk Embroidery, I hope I haven't ran out of time. She's doing a Mother's Day 25% off sale. So she got some new colors and I need to order them. It's absolutely my favorite. I know I'm a Geo Glitter girl. I haven't given up my passion for Geo Glitter. So Geo Glitter is my go-to for snap tabs. Anything I don't have to turn. But this is my go-to for anything I have to turn. So yeah, love it. Just love it. There we go. Hold My Cards wallet. Hope you guys enjoy it. Have a good night.